Mental health is a huge problem today. It's probably going to be a bigger problem in 10 years, not smaller. So we're building the largest data set of behavioral health data for psychology. Ultimately, we're trying to use the model to help people with their mental health.
There's such a massive demand in the mental health space because so many people are in need.
The ratio of providers to people who need care can be anything from like 1 to 30,000.
I mean, people are on wait lists for like a year. I think all of us now have friends, family members, people in our communities that have been in pain or been hurting or going through a difficult time.
There's like a population of people for whom therapy was built. And there are a lot of people who are not served by therapy and by mental health right now.
Accepting the need for help, then finding a therapist, navigating insurance, whether it's the NHS or the American healthcare system, only to then deal with long waiting lists. And even once a therapist is found, they still might not be able to help you in the right way.
It's been now a few weeks, you go to your first few sessions, you're not sure if they understand you, and so
you leave and go to another therapist.
Right. And the average person, I think, has to go through at least 3 therapists before they find the right person for them.
And I think the number we saw was in 2022, 55.8 million Americans went to at least one therapy session. Almost all of them went to exactly one therapy session because just wasn't the right person.
Yeah, and so they'll never find the right person.
Or their, insurance very often covers one therapy session.
And so our dream is that when people have that activation energy, when you feel like there's that moment of change or you're going through something difficult, you can start in like a minute. Literally, you can download the app and you can get started immediately. And even if that's what creates the activation energy for you to then go and get more help outside of what we provide, awesome.
The problem was clear, but the path forward wasn't. How did Neil and Daniel's journey bring them to this moment?
So I started coding when I was 8. I had been obsessed with this area of mental health and psychology for a really long time. I did some research at Imperial in AI and mental health. I would say like the exciting part to me is I think that AI is the biggest change to happen in recent human history, or potentially all of human history. The impact of AI is going to be really significant. Not all of that is positive. And so I think I went into philosophy and philosophy of psychology to think like, how are our minds going to be affected?
I originally went to med school and I did a year of it and realized like, while I love the human body and the idea of medicine, it's really hard to help scaling people. And so I left med school and started a company called Casper. And through that process, I came to this realization that sleep is deeply connected to mental health. And then when GPT-3 came out, I came to this realization, like, what if we could train models to actually be able to do therapy? And then by some miracle, met Daniel and realized that like we had been wanting to build the same company for a long time.
I think Neil asked me the question like, all right, so we both want to train this foundation model for psychology. How much data would we need? If we could build a data set with 10 million hours, maybe we can actually, solve the problem.
And to Daniel's credit, the next day we started working together full time.
Which leads to another challenge. How do you train a model to understand empathy? And how does this compare to other large language models? Dr. Derek Hull, who guides the clinical approach at Slingshot, explains.
Where we really want to emphasize empathy is for the model to understand how difficult some things are. And this relates to how we're training it in general, right? The model needs to understand that change and healing is hard. And one of the challenges we have, because the base large language models are kind of designed to be assistants, they're very agreeable, whatever you want, I will try to give you, they're very compliant. And that has tended to lead the model to move a little too fast. Where if somebody's like, yeah, my dad died, the model's like, great, let's set some goals for how to work through that. It's like way too fast. And that's where data that's specific to a therapeutic context is very helpful, because it helps move the model in a direction where it's going to behave the way that we would want it to behave. The way out of the sadness is through the sadness.
With this insight, Slingshot's model will overcome the obstacles that affect current general-purpose large language models. But what do human therapists think about it?
When we were first getting started, I mentioned we met with 100 therapists, and we kind of thought they would hate us. We're building AI for mental health. Some did, I think on the order of like 3%. I think like 3 of the 100. And what was really cool to see was I think people don't go into therapy and mental health to make money, right? They're going in because they actually want to help people. And I think it's become really evident to a lot of mental health professionals that they just can't scale out to help everyone. So our thought here is basically we want the model to learn all these actions, to have the capability, to have kind of the arsenal, the tools to help tons of people in tons of different ways. And then the problem for us is basically how do we move into an AI context and get an AI to use the right tool in the right way for the right person.
The solution? Ash, the first AI designed for therapy, which offers empathetic voice and text conversations.
To perform at the highest level, you need talent and physical attributes, and then obviously you need a mental resilience, which is incredibly important.
Matt Lund is a British professional footballer and coach who's been using Ash during his season.
I think a lot of the focus years ago was probably more on the physical aspect of it. I've seen that change over the years, and I think it's becoming really important that you have a support system around you.
With each interaction, Ash learns, adapts, and helps people change their minds and lives in the ways they want to.
Yeah, it's been good. Some good conversations and information that I probably wouldn't have got if I was at the training ground. And it's really simple to use, really easy. I think just being able to contact somebody 24/7 and having that person who I can connect to with my mobile phone, if it's a game that I've had at the weekend or something I might be sat up at night and thinking, oh, I want to speak to somebody, just having that access is really important. You could have a bad game on a Saturday and people think you're the worst player in the world and you don't know when you're going to feel up, you're going to feel down, whatever it may be. It's just a good contact to have. Maybe when I was younger and struggling with certain things on and off the pitch, it could have been beneficial to me. Having that dip in form and having somebody to speak to probably changed my career.
From professional athletes to those facing life's greatest challenges, Ash is reaching people all over the world. Sometimes just changing one mind can help too.
This blew my mind. So a few weeks ago, we talked to one of our users in a user interview. So she has stage 4 cancer and she's likely going to pass away from it. And she's been on a wait list to get access to therapy for a year and hasn't been able to. And so she's been using ChatGPT to try to mimic a little bit of a therapist, but it didn't work for her. And somehow she ended up finding our product. And over the course of the last few months, she's telling us about how this has completely changed the course of her life to be able to process this anticipatory grief from what she's going through. But more than that, her and her husband, she actually got her husband using it now because he didn't want to go talk to a human therapist. And he's been using it to really process what they're going through. And now for the first time in months, they're sleeping in the same room again. They're talking to each other every night. They're having dinner. They're going on walks. And together they're processing what's going to happen. You know, it's one of those things where I would never have imagined that for where we are in our life cycle of how early the product is. But it's kind of magical to think that what we're doing actually can dramatically impact people's lives in such a meaningful way.
With rapid progression in artificial intelligence and lessening stigma around personal well-being, treatment of mental health is on the cusp of a huge change. And it's only just the beginning.